Hello there, I'm Alice Baxter. You're watching BBC World News. Our top stories. More than a week after Typhoon Haiyan laid waste to much of the central Philippines, the president criticizes authorities in some areas for not being fully prepared. The president's comments come as new pictures emerge showing the moment the typhoon storm surge hit the Philippines. And workers at Japan's crippled Fukushima nuclear power plant start disabling one of its 4 reactors. Search engine giants Google and Microsoft agree measures to make it harder to find child abuse images online. And why did Mars lose the ability to support life? NASA's latest mission to the Red Planet, launching on Monday, hopes to find out. Hello there, and a very warm welcome to you. Now we start in the Philippines, where there's been an update on the devastation wreaked by Typhoon Haiyan. It's now estimated that 4,000 people have been killed and another 18,000 injured. But according to the country's National Disaster Management Centre, 1,500 people are still missing. Well, the extent of the damage across the country is becoming clearer as aid workers reach outlying islands. And we can now show you some new pictures that have just emerged of the moment that the storm surge ploughed into the homes in the town of Hernani in the Philippines. These images were filmed from the 2nd floor of a house where people were taking shelter. Pretty dramatic stuff. Well, the Philippine President Benigno Aquino has faced fierce criticism for the time it's taken to get aid to those who need it most. He gave his response in an interview with my colleague Rajesh Merchandani. Well, let's now take a moment to look at some images which give a fresh sense of the sheer force of the storm. This is the moment that a storm surge ploughed into homes in Hernani. That's a town to the west of Tacloban, filmed from the 2nd floor of a nearby building. Well, these pictures were filmed by a staff member from the charity Plan International, and one of his colleagues, Alice Clements, joins me live now from Manila by Skype. Alice, good to talk to you. Can you just tell me the story behind these images?
In terms of finding these images, we have a staff member, a member of the Plan team, who's based on the ground. All of our team, we've been in this region for about 50 years now, and we've got about 270, 300 staff who are based in the communities that have been directly affected. So these staff are affected themselves in the instances. So this footage was filmed by one of our team in a small town called Hernani of about 9,000 people. And it was, he was on the 2nd floor of a boarding house, which was the strongest structure that they could find. And he started filming at about 4 in the morning and carried through till about 8 in the morning. And this is the precise moment at 6 a.m. when this devastating storm surge hit the coast. And as you can see, it literally wiped the house.
Yeah, it really did wreak devastation across that area, didn't Alice? These pictures really giving us a very graphic sense of the destruction caused. Tell me, though, how is Hernani faring now? Have rescue efforts managed to reach that bit of the Philippines?
Eastern Samar is one of the provinces where we're working around the clock within our organisation to get aid to people. We've worked in these communities for a long time, so we worked position supply, but the scale of this emergency has even outrun the supplies of the previous position. So we're now working to ensure that emergency, even life-saving relief goods and supplies and services are being delivered to the people in these communities. A lot of the focus has been on Fagan, and that's obviously a very badly affected area. But we need to remember that there are other areas across this affected region where there's just been devastating loss of life. We're an organisation that's focused on children and their families, and these are children who have lost everything. You know, their homes, their possessions, their school, and for their parents, their livelihoods as well. So there's a huge amount of work to do, and the need is absolutely critical at this point.
A huge amount still to do indeed. Alice, many thanks for joining us. Alice Clements there from the charity Plan International. OK, let's move on now and talk about China. The country announced last week that it's to relax its policy of restricting most couples to having only one child. In future, families will be allowed 2 children if one parent is an only child. And that's not the only big change announced by the Communist Party leadership. It's promised even more reform to tackle the big economic issues China will face over the next decade. And let's get the broader impact now of these reforms and a market reaction as well, and talk to our chief business correspondent Linda Yeuh, who's in Singapore for us. Linda, it seems as if markets have been reacting pretty positively to the reforms announced in Beijing so far.
Yeah, Alice, they certainly have. And there is a real sense that the decisions of the third plan, which were sort of released rather more quickly than many thought. I hear it's because social media actually leaked it online, came out late on Friday. And what it actually set out were 60 different kinds of reforms under 15 different categories.
A little earlier, I spoke to Orla, Fagan, a spokesman for the UN's humanitarian coordination body in the Philippines, and she told me that there are still areas which have not yet been reached.
Not only not being reached, but I mean, I heard your report there from Panay, and we've just had a team come back from there this morning. And in Capiz, the administrator of the government begged for help. He said, act now, please act now. There's 98,000 homes partially or totally destroyed there. There's just vast numbers of people who are left, 4 million people, they believe, whose homes are gone or partially gone. There are still areas that we have not got into. We are desperately trying to get in. We're desperately trying to reach those areas. The rest of the operation is moving along. You know, the food is beginning to come out. Water in Tacloban, tap water was available from the weekend. So, you know, small progress has been made.
Small progress.
It's still a big, small progress.
Yeah, as you say, small progress is being made. Still a lot needs to be done. What would you say are still the main needs of people on the ground?
Food, water, shelter, health.
Okay.
At that initial stage. Then we're looking at things like children, like child protection, like getting children back to school to give them a sense of normality, to help them with trauma issues. We're talking about camp management. One of the areas that has had no funding so far is in camp management, and that is really badly needed. We need to set up tents and camps for these people as temporary bases until their homes can be rebuilt.
Orla Fagan of the UN there. Now, 50 people have been killed after a passenger plane crashed whilst attempting to land in the Russian city of Kazan. Investigators are now looking at whether a technical failure or crew error caused the crash. Well, let's get the latest now from our correspondent Daniel Sandford, who's in Moscow for us. Daniel, are we any clearer yet as to what did cause the crash?
We're not, no, but they are making progress in the investigation. They have now recovered the 2 flight recorders, the 2 black boxes from the plane, which of course will have all the technical data from the plane in the last few minutes before the crash, and also the recordings of the voices of the crew on board the plane, and that hopefully will give people some idea of what may have gone wrong. What we understand from those who were at the airport on the day is that the plane had tried to make one landing already, was in the process of going round again to make a second landing, and it appears to have crashed actually perpendicular to the runway. It doesn't seem to have actually been pointing in the right direction onto the runway at the moment of crash. So clearly something went wrong as the plane came around. The investigators haven't completely ruled out terrorism, but I think that is pretty unlikely at the moment. But it is quite striking how little of the plane is left. It's been a very, very, very fierce fire. Instead of seeing bits of fuselage lying around, as you sometimes do after plane crashes, in this case it's really just ashes and a few large bits of engines and wheels and so on. So it's been a very, very serious fire, and of course no survivors.
Yeah, some really devastating pictures that we're looking at the moment, Daniel, and very sadly, of course, this isn't a wholly uncommon occurrence in Russia, is it? It's got a pretty bad record when it comes to flight safety.
Yes, in recent years it's been really atrocious actually.
A very warm welcome back to BBC World News with me, Alice Baxter. The latest headlines now. Now, a gunman has opened fire in the offices of a daily newspaper in Paris. Police say a photographer standing in the reception area was hit in the chest and is now in a critical condition. Well, the attacker hasn't been caught. Well, let's cross straight to Paris now and talk to our correspondent Christian Fraser, who's there for us. Christian, these reports coming into us just within the last few hours. Are we any clear as to the details surrounding the shooting, the causes?
No, but it is the second attack on a news agency here in Paris in the last few days. We understand on Friday a man carrying a shotgun went into the offices of BFM TV. It's a 24-hour news channel here in Paris, emptied the chamber of his gun and turned to an editor and said, "Next time I won't miss you." And although no official link has been yet made, TF1, one of the news agencies here in France, is reporting that the cartridges that were dropped on the scene on Friday are the same as those that were used today. So a major police hunt underway now. Police security stepped up outside the offices of all the major news organisations here in Paris as well. We understand the man fled on foot. He went into the offices, fired twice. He hit the photographer, a 27-year-old man, once in the chest and once in the stomach. He is in a critical condition. The receptionist who hid under the desk was safe. The man fled and apparently they're still looking for him.
It's all pretty dramatic, isn't it, Christian? What's been the reaction to what's happened inside France and inside Paris?
Well, obviously a great deal of shock at the newspaper. Some of the major executives of Libération have been out this morning and been speaking. And in fact, the managing editor said, you know, if we're in a situation where newspapers and newsrooms have to become or take on the bunker mentality, then there's something sadly wrong with our society. But really, I suppose, given that this man is on the loose and given that he's been into newspaper offices in the last 3 or 4 days, everyone taking it quite seriously. And I presume they're all stepping up security as we speak. Manuel Valls, the Interior Minister, is due to visit Libération's offices. It's a left-wing newspaper as well, of course, so they'll obviously, the Interior Minister will be there this afternoon to give his thoughts. And the Major Crimes Unit has taken over the investigation, and as I say, they're looking, they say, for a middle-aged man. He said nothing when he went into the offices today, but clearly the feeling will be that he could strike again if they don't catch him.
And of course raises lots of questions about the levels of security at these premises, doesn't it? Christian, for now, many thanks. Christian Fraser there for us in Paris. Now, leading internet search companies Google and Microsoft have agreed to measures to block access to child abuse images. New software is to be introduced that will automatically block unambiguous search terms which lead to illegal content. The British Prime Minister David Cameron called for action last July and he's welcomed the announcement. But among the internet safety measures, 100,000 unique search terms will be blocked in the UK to begin with, before being expanded to other English-speaking countries. Well, over the next 6 months, the blocks will be rolled out to another 158 languages. But some child safety experts say few child abuse images are actually found by search engines, with the majority to be found on hidden networks. So there are questions over how much difference the measures will actually make. Well, Claire Lilly is head of child safety online at the NSPCC and she joins me live now. Good to have you on the programme, Claire. How big a difference will these measures make?
Well, we're very impressed by the leadership that the UK government has shown on this issue and very encouraged by the focus that the technology sector themselves, particularly the search engines, have put on the issue of child abuse images. This is a big step forward in terms of deterring and preventing offenders who are casual, what we call casual offenders or curious offenders, and those who are looking for images for the first time. So we think this will have a key role in deterring new offenders getting online and looking for images. But it also, crucially, I think, sends a message to those more committed paedophiles who are looking at images through other hidden networks online, that, you know, the extent to which nobody in society wants these images to play any part in our society and on an internet which is suitable for everyone to see.
So you say it will act as a deterrent, it'll help to deter those curious offenders, but what about those persistent offenders who primarily, as I understand, search for child abuse images on hidden networks that won't be picked up by these new changes in the algorithms by Google and Microsoft.
Of course. Well, what we've seen today is the result of some very impressive work by Google, Microsoft and others, where they've really put the best technological brains in the business on one particular issue. Now, we're not saying that this is a silver bullet that will solve the problem of child abuse images online. What we'd like to see them do now is put those same technological brains and focus on a range of other issues which will help to stop child abuse images spread online, some of which might be things like the hidden internet.
Well, the British Prime Minister David Cameron called for action last July and he's welcomed the announcement. Claire Perry is his advisor on internet safety and I spoke to her a little bit earlier about the measures.
Yes, so this is relating to accessing material that's illegal, child abuse images, which are illegal in the UK and in many other parts of the world. And yet we had the problem where you could put in a search term into a website, into a search engine, and you would get returns. You would get some of the images returned, you might get video access, and you might get access to the places where these images were hosted. And for years we've been finding those places, taking them down, blocking, putting down sort of takedown instructions. But what we've got today is the biggest global search engines actually getting involved too.
And yet here we are, Google and Microsoft working uncharacteristically closely together to try and combat this problem. And it is a truly global attempt, isn't it? Because although this is being initiated here in the UK, it is going to be rolled out in 150 languages, isn't it?
Through a process of working with the internet service providers who are bringing broadband into the home, or the Wi-Fi providers where we now have clean public Wi-Fi in the UK, and now with the search engines, I think we are really setting the script in terms of how to work together, not by just legislation or by holding companies' feet to the fire, but through a partnership that says we all need to be involved. Government, who obviously need to bring their own policing resources to bear on this problem, industry, and also consumers. And one of the other many announcements that you'll hear about today is a £25 million educational package being funded by the internet service providers to help parents do what we know they want to do, which is to keep children safe online, but perhaps they lack the skills or the confidence, because often our children are more technologically savvy than we are, to actually do that. So there's no magic bullet, it's a constant series of improvements. And I think the way the internet evolves, it's a bit of an arms race, and so you can't declare victory. Certainly nobody's opening the champagne in Downing Street today, but I think there is a real sense of progress, common sense progress, which is really welcome.
Claire Perry there speaking to me a little bit earlier. OK, some other news for you now. And workers at the stricken Fukushima nuclear power plant in Japan have started removing fuel rods from a storage pond at one of the 4 reactors. It's a complex operation and that's expected to take more than a year. Experts say hydrogen explosions after the earthquake and tsunami in March 2011 have made the facility vulnerable to further tremors. Now, first came the spying scandal involving the United States and some of its closest allies. Now Australia is involved in a similar espionage embarrassment. It's alleged that in 2009, an Australian spy agency tried to listen in on the mobile phone calls of the Indonesian President, Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono. Well, Indonesia has recalled its ambassador. Its foreign minister calls the allegations unbecoming. The Australian Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, had this to say.
All governments gather information, and all governments know that every other government gathers information. The Australian government never comments on specific intelligence matters.
Well, I can speak now to journalist Yeuh McPhedran. He's the defence writer for News Corporation newspapers in Australia. Yeuh, Indonesia's recalling its ambassador to Australia over all of this, so it's taking the issue rather seriously, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is really hit big in Jakarta. There's calls for our ambassador to be expelled. There's calls for breaking of relations, really, from some of the more radical elements there. And with an upcoming presidential election, this will play very, very big in Indonesia. And it's damaging the relationship. There's no question about that.
But this isn't the first time that allegations of spying between these two countries have come to light, is it?
No, that's right. I mean, what the difference here is there's very specific proof in the form of these documents that were leaked by Snowden, Edward Snowden, the National Security Agency whistleblower. And these documents show very specifically that the Australian Signals Directorate, our electronic spy agency, targeted the president's personal mobile phone and the personal mobile phone of his wife and several of his inner circle. So this sort of proof in the form of these slides that have been leaked is very, very damaging.
And it's damaging because Australia needs Indonesia's cooperation with regards to the asylum issue in particular, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and there's been so much work put into this issue over the last few years, and in recent times with the change of government here, this government got off on the wrong foot with Indonesia on a whole lot of matters, including the asylum seeker issue. It's put a lot of effort into trying to paper that over. It's just starting to make a little bit of progress, and now this, and relations have been set back considerably, and the Indonesians will take retaliatory action. There's absolutely no question about that, and I suspect that Australia will receive quite a lot more asylum seekers coming through the ports of southern Java in the next few weeks.
And as you say, it'll probably play out in the upcoming elections in Indonesia as well. Ian, many thanks for now. Yeuh McPhedran there joining us live from Australia. Many thanks. Now, the embattled mayor of Toronto says he'll challenge moves by the city council to strip him of some of his powers. Rob Ford has admitted smoking crack cocaine whilst in office. On Sunday, the mayor went to watch his hometown team in a Canadian Football League playoff game, ignoring a request by the league's commissioner to stay away. David Willis has more from Toronto. Up to 12,000 Afghan Taliban fighters have been killed, wounded or captured this year. That's according to latest figures from the UN. Well, the report also says that violence in Afghanistan is at a 3-year high. This week, tribal elders are preparing to gather for a Grand Assembly or Yeuh Jigra to decide on the future of US troops in the country after 2014. Well, with me now is Ali Arian from the BBC's Afghan service. Ali, 12,000 Afghan Taliban fighters having been killed. Is that a number that you were expecting?
Actually, according to UN, 10 to 12,000 Taliban, they are killed, captured or wounded, so they're not all killed. According to UN report, from the past 3 years, fighting in Afghanistan, violence are in highest level. And it was expected that lots of Afghans from both sides, from Afghan security and also the Taliban, they're killed because fightings are going on in Afghanistan and it's tense these days. In this report, actually, it is stressed that because 80% of the casualties for Afghan forces, they came from homemade bombs by the Taliban. So it is stressing that the Afghan government should take some measures to prevent some homemade bomb makings. Things should not be in hand of the Taliban, which is mainly used in mining industry.
Well, is that one of the measures that's going to be discussed at this Yeuh Jigra? Could you just describe exactly what that is and what kind of decisions you think will be taken at it?
Yeah, actually, the main thing which Yeuh Jigra is going to do is they're deciding about the future of US forces in Afghanistan, whether US forces should remain after 2014 or not. So this is what Yeuh Jigra is going to do, and it is going to start in 2 days, and around 2,500 people around Afghanistan, they are gathering in Kabul, and it is a big event these days in Afghanistan, and security is very tight in Kabul. They are deciding, actually, because President Karzai said this is the Afghan people who are deciding about the security agreement between Afghanistan and US, which determined the future of US forces in Afghanistan, and they are deciding. And
briefly, from speaking to your contacts on the ground in Afghanistan, is there any sense of what they think will be decided? Will we see US forces remaining on the ground in Afghanistan after 2014?
There are actually different ideas, but mainly Afghans and also in the parliament, in Afghan government. There are some signs that this security agreement should be signed because it's very crucial and it's very important for Afghanistan future and for Afghan people. But still there are some complaints and some groups there saying no, actually there's no need for this security agreement because, you know, it will tense the fighting in Afghanistan. But most Afghans, they think that the security agreement should be signed and the Yeuh should confirm it.
And this Grand Assembly that will decide all of these key decisions in Afghanistan, as you were saying, will begin on Thursday. Ali Arian, many thanks for coming in and speaking to us from the BBC's Afghan service. A quick reminder now of our top story here on BBC World News. The President of the Philippines, Benigno Aquino, has told the BBC there was a breakdown at the local government level in Tacloban province. You've been watching BBC World News. Do stay with us.